Hello, everyone. So I'm going to start off by talking about every Brit's favourite topic, emotions. So there's going to be no stiff upper lip today. We're going to be talking about emotions and the impacts they can have on your marketing. So first off, I want to think about films. So films are probably the best example of where we use emotions. So you think about Shawshank Redemption. Why is it one of the most successful films of all time? Well, it's because it really grips you. So you feel angry, you feel sad. It gets you through different kind of roller coaster emotions. You think about Silence of the Lambs, another top-grossing film. The reason that's so successful is you're terrified all the way through. Think about Titanic. I defy anyone to watch this film and not have tears in their eyes at this moment. It gets you. It really grabs you. You feel it. And then my favorite film of all time, The Lion King. This is the best example of a roller coaster of emotions. You have this scene where his dad dies, and it's awful, and I don't know why Disney do it, because it's the first films that we watch as a child, and we learn that parents die. You think about Bambi, you think about this, it makes us cry. But then it also brings us back up again, so we get this kind of scene, and suddenly, we're happy. We're loving the film, we're singing along. The most popular films, so they're all the top-grossing films of recent times, they all provoke strong emotions. But the problem is, we forget about this with marketing. So you probably all know this quote, very well-known quote. So people forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you make them feel. That's the important thing with anything that we do. That's why films do this. That's why they tug on different emotions throughout. That's why we talk about films, because they've connected with us. If you think about other films that you've seen that you've maybe not told your friends about, it's because they probably just didn't connect. You didn't really feel anything. But like I say, we forget this in marketing. So what I want to do is take you through some of the recent stuff that I've shared. So think about content and campaigns that you've shared recently. And this can be online, so this can be that you've tweeted them, shared them on Facebook, shared them on whatever is your favorite platform. Or it can be offline. It can be that you were sat in the pub and you were talking to your friends and you were like, oh, did you see what that brand did? Did you see that campaign or that piece of content? So I'm going to start off by going through a few of my recent shares to show you the kind of thing that I'm talking about. So this one, I don't know how many people have seen this, but Greggs has announced a drive-through bakery, which is very exciting. It's probably the most northern story I've ever seen. I shared it because it made me laugh. It's hilarious. We've got a drive-through bakery. I feel like is a bit of a stretch for Greggs. I don't feel like they are really a bakery. But yeah, we've got a drive-through. I've also worked it out for you, for anyone where this is brand new information. It's an hour away. So if you fancy on lunch or after the conference, going and checking it out and going to the first ever drive-through bakery in the UK, you can do. It's only an hour away. The next one, so this is a campaign by Dove. I generally love most of Dove's campaigns because they make me happy. They make me proud as a woman of what they're doing. So this campaign was about the way we perceive women. So they looked at how women were portrayed in terms of stock imagery. So if you Google a happy woman, it's all the same kind of pictures that come back. Or if you Google strong, it's the same kind of pictures. And what they wanted to do was to show that actually happy doesn't just have one look. There's not just one type of happy. There's all different people. And they did this hijack, and it's a great campaign, so I'd recommend looking it up. But that made me happy. That's why I shared it. I was proud. I liked it. Totally different emotion. Anger. So again, I don't know how many people saw this. It was earlier this year. And it was Susan Fowler talking about her experiences at Uber, where she experienced some very sexist behavior. She wrote a blog post all about how awful it was for her as a woman working at Uber. And it got loads of shares because it made people angry. It made them really annoyed that people could still be treated like this in the 21st century at a company like Uber. This one, I don't know how many people saw this. So this was from TV2. It's a Finnish TV station. And it's a video advert. And essentially what they did, they got a load of different people in a room together. And all these people on first look very different. They don't have the same views, they don't behave the same way. But they went through different things. So they called out different things, and it was like anyone that does this, anyone that's married, anyone that enjoys this. And all the people had to go, and it was showing that although we're all very different, actually there's certain stuff that we share, and it brought them together, and it was very emotional. They got down to one, I think it was anyone that's transgender, and there was just this one woman that had to go and stand in the box on her own. And even though she was on her own, everyone gave her a round of applause on the way down. And it was lovely. It was a lovely moment because it showed that even though we're so different in this world, there's lots of stuff that we have in common, compassion being one of them. And I watched the video, and I'd recommend you watching it. And that made me well up because it was such a lovely video, especially in the times that we're living in now. One of my favourite things to share, red pandas. So this story made me really happy. So the red pandas are, on the brink of being extinct. But Sachi finally found a mate that he actually liked, and they're hooking up in the zoo. And it was a lovely story. It made me happy. I wanted to share it. In general, I do just love sharing red panda stories. Any kind of GIF of a red panda is going to make me pretty happy. So if anyone has any, feel free to send them through. And then finally, so Spotify, I don't know how many people saw this campaign that they did, but it was hilarious. So they went through their data and looked at when people listened to different songs, how many people listened to them, and then put up these big billboards around London, around all different places. But again, it's funny. Someone listening to Sorry 42 times on Valentine's Day is a funny thing. It makes you laugh. But if I think about a lot of the things I've just mentioned, they're all adverts. And it's kind of weird that I'm sharing an advert. Content pieces, red pandas, yes, maybe, but I'm sharing adverts because I find them funny or I find them I'm happy about them. And then some more notable campaigns. So you might not have seen all of those ones, they're a bit niche, but some ones you will have seen, hopefully. So this one. So this was a campaign, this is quite an old one, and it was done by a group that were against smoking in America. And so one day, all New Yorkers woke up, and these were everywhere around New York. And everyone was talking about it. It's still named as one of the most successful campaigns. And why? Because it's shocking. If you're a guy walking along and suddenly you're like, cigarettes are going to shrink my dick, that's quite shocking. You're probably going to talk about it and be like, hey man, did you see that? Is that true? Should we be worried? And you also might be a bit worried. So you're shocked by the saying, and you're also a bit worried. So you're probably going to do something about it. It resonates. It's also quite ironic. So you'd notice on the previous slide, they're saying if tobacco companies can lie, we can too. That was the point of it. So they were saying tobacco companies lie, so we're just going to tell you that smoking shrinks your dick. It's actually true. So smoking can affect your penis. So if you're a guy and you smoke, this is your friendly advice. Maybe check it out. But another campaign, so Dumb Ways to Die. Most of you probably seen this. There's a video, there's a game. Went viral. Why did it go viral? It was funny. It was a new way of telling people. So it's telling you not to play on the train tracks in Australia. But it was funny. It was the first time that they've done something that actually makes you laugh, even though it's a safety message. And that's why people shared it. That's why people played it. Red Bull. Why do people share Red Bull stunts so much? Because they're shocking. Like sending a man to do a jump out of space. It's kind of insane. You're shocked. You want to watch it and you want to share it because you're like, shit, that's pretty cool. That's why they work. So films, when we look at those, the most popular films all play on our emotions. And it's the same with campaigns. So that's why I shared the campaigns I shared. That's why those really successful campaigns are so successful. So they evoke really strong emotions. The media even has a saying for this. So if it bleeds, it leads. That's their way of saying, that's why if you tune into the news, it will always start with some form of death. Someone will have died somewhere, and that's going to be the first headline that you hear, because that's what hooks you in. That's what makes you want to watch that program. That's what you share with your friends. So I live in London, and yesterday, the first thing that we were talking about in the office was the fire that happened, because it affects you. You're emotionally attached to that. You're worried about people. You want to know what you can do. And this is why they have that saying, because they know that emotions are the most popular thing for getting people to talk about something. And it's important not to forget how social media affects emotions. So the emergence of social media has actually brought about a whole new emotion, FOMO. So the fear of missing out. It already existed before social media. People were still kind of keen to be there and do everything that everyone else was doing. But social media has made it so much worse. You know, you see on Instagram that someone's doing something, and you're like, well, I want to go there. You know, there's a new restaurant that someone's eating at, and I'm like, well, I want to go there. I want to see what the food's like there, or I want to go to that bar. It's really exacerbated, but that's why these things are so popular, because people share them because they're jealous. They're scared of missing out. This is a prime example of that. So how many people have heard of the $100 cheesecake, Philly cheesesteak? So Philly cheesesteaks were, I mean, they're pretty cheap generally. They're everywhere in Philadelphia. And why this campaign worked so well was because it was so shocking. The fact that you would pay $100 for a cheesesteak that you could get anywhere. But people went. People went. They paid their $100 when they could have probably paid like $20 instead. Like cheesesteak with champagne is a bit of a weird concept. But people went because they were shocked by it, but then they saw that other people were going and they were also jealous. It played to emotions. That's what made it successful. People were jealous. I mean, it does look good. Would I spend $100 on it? Probably not. But it worked because it tapped into people's emotions. This is from Gilmore Girls, which is another great TV show. And this was an episode that they did all about lines. And it was about people queuing for stuff. And they went to different like cronut shops opening or different new shoes that were out and everyone's lining up for them. And then she goes to another one and there's a line in a street and she's like, oh, what are you guys waiting for? And the guy's like, I don't actually know. I don't want to miss out on what's in there. And that's where we've kind of got to. We're so jealous of things that we'll queue and we don't even know what we're queuing for. Because we don't want to miss out, because it's tapping into our jealousy, our emotions. So I want to go through what makes these successful. So emotions are clearly important, but what makes them successful? What makes them spread? It's all about word of mouth. So you have face-to-face word of mouth and online word of mouth. And you would probably guess that in the modern world, a lot of that is online, right? A lot of us are sharing stuff, we're seeing it online, that's where the recommendations are coming from. But it's not actually true. And I think we forget that working in digital marketing. We think that everything's about what we can get people to share on social media. But actually, 93% of word-of-mouth recommendations are done face-to-face rather than online. And you believe them a bit more. If someone sat opposite you telling you about something that they did, you're more likely to want to go do it than if you just see on your Facebook feed that someone ate somewhere. You might think, oh, if I'm ever in that area, I might go. But if someone sits there and tells you about this amazing restaurant, you're like, oh, shit, I might actually make an effort and go there. It works so much more. Emotional connections make us more likely to remember something. So that's why those films are so successful. That's why the campaigns are so successful, because we've got an emotional attachment to them. That's why we remember them. And that's why we talk about them offline as well as online. So we might share some content. We might not really remember what we shared. But if it's got an emotional connection, I'll probably actually, when I see a friend, tell them about it. And I do this with content, I do this with campaigns, I do this with films. We all do it with everything. You'll do it with a song. If a song makes you feel a certain way, you'll be like, oh, you should listen to this. That's why it works. So I always talk about the pub test. So we do this for our campaigns. So when you're thinking up a campaign idea or a content idea, put yourself in the shoes of who you want to be talking about that campaign. And could you actually imagine them sat in a pub talking about your campaign? Is it going to hook them in? Is there going to be an emotional connection to the idea? And if not, if you can't imagine them sat there, I will say it doesn't have to be the pub. I'm not just promoting everyone going to get drunk. It could be the water cooler test, because for B2B content, there might be a bit of a lesser chance of you kind of sitting in the pub talking about it. But can you imagine someone actually talking about that with someone face to face? If not, it's probably not the best idea. You probably need another hook. Ad spend can obviously help reaching a bigger audience, but it doesn't make something worth talking about. So just because you put money behind it doesn't mean that people want to talk about it. It just means that more people have seen it. So you need to remember that you need to have the hook to make people want to talk about your campaign first. Face-to-face audiences are more captive, so that's why we want them to do this, right? So if someone sat opposite you, like I say, telling you about something, you've kind of got no choice but to listen, whereas if someone just shares something online, you could listen to what they're saying, or you could be browsing something else. This is taken from a really great book that I recommend for everyone called Contagious, and it talks about which emotions promote sharing, so which make us more likely to talk about something. So there's high arousal and low arousal. So the high arousal ones are the ones that you should try and be feeding into your campaigns if you want people to remember them and talk about them. The low arousal aren't really going to do much. That means you might see some content, you might like it, but you're not necessarily going to share it or talk about it. So now we know that emotions are important. How do we add them to our campaigns? Because that's the difficult bit, right? How do I take this away and do something with it? This is like a really great suspense because the clicker's not working. Oh. So this was a video that Google released ages ago now. Because a lot of people think that to add emotion, you need people involved. But this video shows that it's not true. So I recommend, again, that you have a look at it. So it's called How to Impress a French Girl. And essentially, it just goes through a guy typing in a load of queries, but you kind of follow his life as he does it. So he's on study abroad in France, and he sees this girl. He's like, how do I say this in French? And then it's, how do I book flights to here? How do I get a job here? How do I organize a wedding here? And then it's going through. So you see his life through his search query, and it tugs at your emotions. You're kind of invested in this guy. You want to know what's going to happen with his life. So you don't need to see people or involve people necessarily in your campaigns to be able to evoke emotions. Made to Stick is another great book that I really recommend you read, and this has something called the 3 whys. So this is how you get to the emotional element of something. So you ask yourself, why are people doing something? And then why is that important? But you ask that question 3 times, and that's the important part, because that's how you get to the emotional bit. And this sounds a bit weird, so I thought I'd highlight it with some examples of campaigns we've done and show how we get to the emotional bit and why they're then successful. So we have a company that insures taxis, like Uber drivers, black cabs, or different people. So it's about taxis. So why do people use taxis? Well, they want to get to where they need to be. So then why is that important? Well, we want to arrive quickly and safely. We want to make sure that we're going to get there, on time, but in a safe way. Why is that important? Well, we don't want to travel on unclean transport, so we want to have a nice, clean taxi. Why is that important to us? Why do we want to travel in a clean taxi? Well, we don't want to get ill, because then we wouldn't be able to do the stuff that we want to do. So we know where the emotional connection is kind of, we don't want to be ill, we want to be safe. So we come up with this. So this is a campaign whereby we worked with a university in London, and we swabbed all the different modes of transport in London and tested how clean they were, and then ranked them according to cleanliness. So we looked at what bacteria was growing on different tubes or buses or taxis, and then we had this interactive graphic where you go under the microscope, so for example for a taxi, and it shows you where the germs are most likely to be and also what those germs are. And it's quite shocking. So people don't want to get ill on transport with our emotional connection. And this data actually showed that you are actually really likely to get ill. And there's all these superbugs that are living on the tube that we're getting every day. It's quite shocking. A lot of people share it because they're like, oh, shit, that's really awful. That's really dirty. I don't necessarily want to be on that line. I don't want to get ill. So that's why that works. We also have a watch company that we work with. So why do people buy watches? They want to tell the time. Why is that important? Again, we need to know when we want to be somewhere. Why is it important? Well, because we want to do the things that we enjoy. That's why we want to be there. Why is that important? Well, we don't want to miss out on anything. So we've got that FOMO again. We don't want to miss out on what other people might be doing. We don't want to miss out on getting somewhere. So what do we do with that? We created a quiz called The Time of Your Life. And what this does is you go through and answer different questions about what you do. So, for example, how long you spend commuting, how long you spend in the shower, how long you spend having sex. And then it tells you over your lifetime how much time you spend doing those things. And it works because it's kind of shocking. So finding out how much time you actually spend doing something is quite shocking for someone because you could be missing out on other things. The headlines are a bit weird on this. So the Mirror headline talks about how much you waste having sex. I'm not sure whether I call that wastage. But it allows you to compare yourself to other people. So you're shocked at what it's telling you, but then you also might be a bit sad if it turns out that everyone else is maybe having a bit more sex than you. So it taps into your emotions. You get to compare yourself. You're like, oh shit, I'm a bit sad about that. Final one, so we work with a kitchen client. So why do people spend time in the kitchen? Well, they want to cook food for themselves and their families. That's why we do that. We kind of have to do that. Why is that important? Well, we need to eat to survive. So that's one element. But why else is it important? Well, some of us enjoy cooking. We want to show off what we've done. So why is that important? Well, we like showing off our culinary creations. So think of it, Instagram and the food porn hashtag on Instagram. Loads of people want to show off what they've done. So there's an emotional connection there. We want to show off. But there's also a flip of that. So when you look at Instagram, everything's perfect on there. So what do we do to get into that emotional connection of people wanting to share stuff, but also have something that's a bit different that would make them want to talk about our campaign? We show the bigger side of it. So we did a campaign where we worked with bloggers and we got them to share the bit that they would share on Instagram, but then what the wider scene is. And again, this is quite shocking. So you've got the lovely plate of buns that she's cooked, but then you've got the screaming kid in the background, and there's other ones where the kitchen's in chaos. Again, it taps into your emotions. It makes you want to share it. Because it's funny. People can laugh about it. Everyone's like, oh yeah, that's what I look like. My kitchen's not actually Instagram perfect all the time. There's only a small snapshot that I'm actually sharing on there. It makes us laugh. Final one, so we have a gambling client. So why do people bet on sports? They care about their team. Why is that important? We feel allegiance to that team. We share that allegiance with our friends, and we want our team to be the best. So how do we tap into that emotion? How do we tap into that competitiveness? We build a quiz. So we get people to test their knowledge of how well they know their team, compete against other teams, because we know that they like to do that. And then we order the table by how knowledgeable they are about their team. And that works because it shocks people, first of all. It makes them angry if their team's not winning, or it makes them happy if their team is winning. It taps into different emotions at different times. What else can impact on emotion? So we've gone through how you add emotion to campaigns, but what else can impact that's important? Colour is a big thing. And something that's also missed when you're designing your content. So if you've thought about it and you know what emotion you're trying to evoke in someone, it's important to match that in terms of the language that you use, but also the colours that you use, because we have different emotional connections to different colours, as you can see with these. So red, for example, is more likely to make us angry or to reinforce that idea. So I want you to think about the emotions you're trying to evoke and therefore what colours you should use in your design. And remember the importance of colour. So to summarise, these are the things that I want you to do when you go away. So think about what made you share different things. What emotions did they tap into? What made it more popular for you? And then ask yourself the whys. So why do people do something? And then why is that important? Think about your colour choices and read the books that I told you about because they are really great. Thank you.